I'd say some of the, in general, one of the biggest things is just accomplishing new things. I feel like every year I tackle something new, whether, this year Robin and I bought this house and, we're learning about renovations, and it feels like, every day we wake up and we're like, hey, like I wonder if we can complete this task, put a window in, finish a trim properly or whatever. And, in years past, it's like, I wonder if I could do something to my van or, so there's these like mini accomplishments that I feel like every day I wake up and I'm excited to do. And I feel like, even in season with moto, I get those same kind of, accomplishments as well, where, you wake up and you're like, okay, like I'm gonna complete 3 30-minute motos today. I'm gonna go for a mountain bike, and I'm gonna go for a PR on this one ride. And so I just feel like those little accomplishments every day are kind of what keep me going, and those mini goals in life, and just kind of learning things, always learning and growing. It's kind of what gets me out of bed every morning. In our sport and even in life, just the fear that you're not good enough. Whether that means, always comparing yourself to somebody better than you, or, not living up to what you believe that you can be. And I think that's kind of leads back to having those mini goals every morning and those accomplishments. But, sometimes you don't accomplish them, and you sit back and you're like, man, why couldn't I get that done, today or this year, or, whether it be racing or, and I just feel like those little defeats, give a guy anxiety, and just, I'd say even just society in general, this feeling of not fitting in sometimes, and just the path and route I've taken in my life, as far as being a racer, instead of, going to school and kind of getting that job, that 9 to 5. And I feel like sometimes there's a social norm that kind of pulls on you to, become that norm and fit in with society. And I've definitely fought that kind of, that ability to fit in sometimes, and more or less always taken a second if I feel that anxiety or that struggle, and been like, you know what, I'm in a great spot in my life, and there's no need for me to compare it to other lives or other people's lives, and just be really happy and grateful with the people around me and where I'm at, and just the ability to kind of overcome that in the same time as recognizing that anxiety. And I feel like that's one thing that I do good at, and but like I said, it's a big thing to kind of pull myself out of the norm of society and really focus on what I'm doing in my life.
Would you say it's a regular thing that you feel like maybe you question yourself that you're not doing enough, or you're not enough, or you question your path? Like, is it something that kind of toys with you on a regular basis?
I think as you get older, you kind of recognize the path that you're on might be a little bit more paved than you thought it was. But I remember being in high school, and I remember teachers making fun of me for the van I drove, and just lots of people questioning my decisions, as far as the path I took in my life. And I even remember my parents to a certain degree, my mom more specifically, being like, hey, like, I really, really want you to go to university and like take some courses and do that stuff. And I kind of told her, I'm like, no, like I really want to take this racing serious, and that's what I want to do for a living. And I think that's kind of, it goes back to like people wanting you to fit into this social norm of like, finishing high school, going to university, getting a really good job, buying the house, getting married, having the kids, kind of following that normal social path. And I think whenever you veer off of that, you're always going to have critics and people that disagree with you because you're not on the same path they are. But I think as you get older, you kind of realize, hey, like this is my own path, and I'm going to embrace it. And yeah, my path might not have some perks that their path might have, but I think it's important to realize that you're in your own world, and what you choose to do with that is completely up to you, and how you live your life is completely up to you. And of course, we're all dealt different cards, but in the end, I think it's important to make your own decisions and kind of live with them. Well, um, yeah, a big thing for me, and it's going to sound ironic because this is going to come to you guys on a social platform, but I think social media in general has really kind of just messed up society. It's weird to me, like, we sit back and we all sit on our phones and we go through social media and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all the rest of them, and I feel like there's just this kind of like this weird thing where you're always viewing somebody's best life and what they're willing to show you, and you never really see their true struggles or what's really going on in somebody's life in those situations. So, and I don't know if getting rid of social media would change our reactions and our communications with one another, or if we would just find a different way to do it. I mean, I just feel like I think small acts of kindness go a crazy long way. I mean, for example, Robin and I were driving through a Tim Hortons drive-through the other day, and somebody in front of us bought us some coffees. And, like, you're driving away and you're thinking to yourself, that was really kind of that person. They didn't have to do that. And so you kind of realize that there's like these little ways to, make people's days, and, whether it be just seeing somebody that's really down on a day and just simply smiling at them and saying hello. I think that makes a big difference in a lot of people's lives, and I feel like that's lost a little bit in our society, and especially in our sport too. I feel like, you gotta put up the big tough guy face, and you kind of gotta run around and, try to act like, nothing affects you, and that goes for sport and society. And, whether that be an influence of social media kind of always portraying like someone's best life, or what that really means. But I think it's always important to have that kind of close-knit group of people around you that you share that stuff with. But then at the same time realizing, somebody that you might not know is also going through a struggle, and that just that simple hello or simple act of kindness, it goes a long ways with people. And I know just those little things go a long way with me. And it's not saying that you need to give a lot of money or the case, but always give what you can, I think, is important, and I think that's always going to be reciprocated. So yeah, whether that'll change our world or not in that case, but I just think our lack of community a little bit, as we live on all these houses side by side, but do you actually know your neighbor 3 houses down? Do you really know who they are? And so I think that's a big thing, is just trying to get to know the people actually that live around you, and just creating that community.
Yeah, like as connected as we are with the technology that's available to us, we're even more disconnected because of it.
Yeah,
on other
totally.
levels. So.
And I don't really know what causes that. And I mean, I think of some of the times that, stick in my head, my thoughts the most are like being in the middle of the wilderness with my buddies, like skiing or snowboarding or mountain biking or even riding dirt bikes, where like you don't even have a phone and like you're just connecting with people on a completely different level. I think about yourself and Brad and a few other people where we've spent, nights on a mountain when it's freezing cold, and like the connections you make on that, level where you're entrusting in your buddy to keep you alive if something goes wrong is like, it's crazy how much that stuff just creates a relationship. And I mean, yeah, it's like you said, like we have all these devices to be connected, but then in the end I think we're less connected from one another. And I just feel like the true purpose of like the social media platforms is kind of been skewed, whether it be by companies or certain people. But yeah, like I don't feel like people really show who they truly are.
Yeah.
Myself included.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really know what a guy's going through on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Or it's almost like I find, even if I go to like a family dinner or something, like a function with my friends, if we're just hanging out, there's almost like this lull period where we've already kind of had an idea of what they've been doing, that there's like this weird kind of hour or hour and a half before you actually really start kind of connecting with them in that environment, because you've already sized up what they've been going through for the past month or a couple weeks, and it's like you've almost forgot how to communicate with them, or it's like it kind of creates this weird void for a bit, and then as the night goes on, the scene is set or the vibe, you kind of get back to like that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, and I think that's true. Like, so like if you have like a family member that's going through something, or like a friend that went through some crazy experience, and you see it on social media or something, or that they posted, and like you said, there's like that, it's like about it, but then like there's that whole face-to-face encounter where you're like, okay, like tell me about this. But it's like getting to that point is kind of like, it's a weird thing in our society right now. It's like, but then people pretend like they know what's going on in your life, or they have a perception of what's been going on with you, and it's like, okay, like, well, you only really know like a quarter of the story, or you only really know the part of the story that I wanted you to know.
Yeah, it's like social media has gotten rid of that. The whole first 5 to 10 minutes of somebody actually being interested in your life and what's totally going on. And as connected as we are, it's like when we're standing face to face with somebody, there's almost like this disconnect, and it's almost like trying to relearn how to have that connection or that interaction with the person you're with, which I think has obviously always been an issue over time, but it's almost like it's more of an issue now. Like like I can't imagine what 18-year-old kids are going through when they go on a first date with somebody. Like, how do they even know what to do with themselves?
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine myself going on a first date with somebody now, because it's like it's almost like I wouldn't know what to do, because we almost came in when it was like when that stuff started taking off, like the whole
and I think that's why we're maybe a little bit more aware of it, is because like we grew up with flip phones, and we're calling and texting people is like expensive,
or lives away from it, like like,
but then like I feel like you can still meet people in today's society where like a really good salesman. Like, I met a guy the other day, a really good salesman, and he got to the point where the guy was really nice, and like we had a 30-minute conversation about fridges, but then like I knew more about the guy than I know about people that I might consider close to me. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, there's certain people that they just open up instantly and they gain your trust, and then there's other people where you're like, man, like I've known this guy for 5 years and I still think he might be a little shifty, or you just don't know who he is. So it's like, and I don't know, you know, what affects those people differently or why they like that, but I think social media might be a huge cause of some of that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd say always be careful who you surround yourself with. And obviously that's really hard as, you know, a young rider and stuff, but even as like a parent of a young rider and stuff, it's like you have to be very careful who influences, you know, your kid in their upbringing and stuff. And, you know, I think you and I have a very similar path, and we both went to like the Perform-X camps in California, and I know you've expressed how much it changed your life, and I know how much it changed my life, and I feel like those, you know, your kid's going to meet somebody at some point that really changes their life, whether you like it or not. And, you know, even as a young guy, it's like you got to find somebody that you're like, okay, I want to be like that guy, and, you know, but like, how does he do it? And also realizing that, like, that guy might have went through 10 years of struggle. You know, I think back to my amateur career. It's like, man, I've been on a long path to get to where I am. And I think one of the main things I could teach kids is be able to identify your problems with yourself as an athlete, and be really honest with yourself. Because I feel like one of the things to even grow in your life is to always analyze yourself and be like, you know, like, am I being a good boyfriend today? You know, am I putting everything into my training? You know, are all those things matching up to my goals? And I think when you're really honest with yourself, you might find out, man, you know, I got to pick it up if I want to do this for a living. Or, you know, if she's going to become my wife someday, then, you know, I got to make sure that I'm the best boyfriend I can possibly be to her, and show her that I do love her. You know, just things like that that'll help you grow, both as an athlete and as just a human in society. And I think that self-reflection is a really big thing, and that'll help you stay safe and take the path that you need to choose the people that you need to surround yourself with. And I think when you find the right people to say help train you, or to help, you know, guide you in the right direction as far as bike setup goes, or just those little things like that, then I think when you start finding those right people, then that's kind of when things start taking off for you.
I know for myself, like, self-reflection can be a really tough thing to navigate. Totally. Being honest with yourself, it can be an uncomfortable situation trying to identify your flaws. Obviously, that's something that you would account to your success and your growth. And would you say there was a process or something you may have done to get to that point where you feel like that was a necessary tool to use for your growth? Like, because that, I know for myself, it was never, it was a hard thing to not rip yourself apart, but to identify like what is actually holding you back or stunting you in some way, shape, or form.
I think in the early years for me, it was a lot of failure. I had huge crashes, and you know, I had some pretty big injuries, and I feel like eventually you're going to have a crash or an injury where you sit back and you're like, man, is this really worth it? And if you decide yes, then there's always going to be that moment where you're like, okay, how am I going to achieve what I'm doing so that this is very unlikely to happen again? Meaning, you know, like, how am I going to do this without making these crashes and mistakes again? And I think you kind of see that through a course of like faster guys where they, you know, they get going, they start going faster, and it's like, okay, like huge crashes and huge upsets here and there, and then they get to a point where they start figuring it out, and they kind of like, okay, like, you know, maybe I need to make my bike better, or maybe I need to be fitter, and then like you see those guys come back, and it's like, man, those guys make some huge changes. And I honestly think it's just some huge amounts of failure where like they've set the bar here and they're down here, and they constantly keep looking up there where they're like, how am I going to get there? And I mean, I think it's no different than yourself, where you're just persistent and you just, you know, you keep working at it and you keep working at it, and eventually it just comes around where you're, and then eventually you're just sitting there someday and you're like, holy, look how far I've come just with tackling these like little goals, or like self-reflection. And it's like you said, it's hard to look at yourself and be like, you're not good enough, or you're not good enough at this. But then at the same time, you know, you hear these guys talk about, oh, you gotta love yourself and respectful of yourself, or you get in this kind of downward spiral where I'm not good enough, and then you kind of get depressed and you have no confidence. So it's like, it's a very fine line of, you know, self-reflection to make yourself better, but at the same time still believing in yourself that you can be better.
And like that's definitely, a lot of that's accounted to, like I guess almost the self-reflection is triggered by moments of failure. And like, would you say over time your attitude towards failure has changed? Like obviously nobody ever wants to fail, but does it open your mind to like taking more risks? Because I think for myself, like I look at failure as, obviously it's uncomfortable, but it's tough to navigate at the time, but it's also, it like, as cliche as it sounds, because everybody says it, it is truly something that opens up a door towards growth.
I think when you're younger, you see how people around you deal with failure, and I think it's kind of a weird thing because like you use the word failure, but nobody ever really gives you a definition of it. You know, like, is second place failure, or is, you know, a falling over in a corner failure, or is like, you know, not finishing high school failing, or, you know, I think it's whatever is perceived in your life by your family and what you have as well, and what you expect of yourself. And so I feel like there's like this kind of like, there's different levels of it in my world where, you know, but it kind of applies in all different directions. You know, if I consider myself failing on the track, you know, once I learned how to overcome that, and, you know, it was like, okay, I need to get fitter. So then I got fitter. And so I think learning how to fail, but learning how to identify the failure, and then using that to make a plan and move forward from it, and being like, okay, that was okay. It was okay that I failed, but, you know, how am I going to move forward from this and grow from this and become better from this? And it's not to say that I won't make that failure again, but I hope the next time maybe it won't be as dramatic, you know? And I think you can start applying that across your entire life. Like, for example, one of the scariest things I did this year was buy this house with Robin, and neither of us had any idea how to buy a house. You know, we're out here in BC, just her and I, and so we started looking, and it's like, when it came to do it and sign the papers, I felt like I was more nervous than I was lining up for a race. And it was like, holy, you know, like, this is huge. And I kind of sat back for a second, and I was like, this could go totally wrong. This could go bad. This could fail big time, but it could also go really good. But you don't really know unless you take the chance. So I feel like, you can kind of apply that across your entire life, where you're like, yeah, I might fail at that, but I might also not. So, and I feel like that was the biggest thing, is just kind of taking chances and kind of finding those places that are uncomfortable for you, and learning how to push those limits and fail in those areas and growing from them.
Yeah, I guess like the more susceptible and open you make yourself to failure, the more you see it as like an opportunity for growth, and then the more open you are down the road to.
And I feel like there's always going to be critics. There's always going to be people that look at you and point their finger at you and say, you failed, you're not going to ever do this and that, and or like, you're done, you're finished, and there's always going to be those people that say that stuff, and but I feel like it's always like, especially in our sport, there's just like this like mountain of people just trying to climb over one another and to get to the top, right? And it's like, of course they're going to say that to you, because they want to be the better guy. They want to be at the top of the totem pole. They want your ride on that team. They want to win the championship. So it's like, people are going to say some pretty gnarly things to make you feel like your failure was way worse than it probably was. So yeah, it's kind of it's a weird deal how society and our sport works, but that's kind of how it is. And it might just be my own perception of how I view others that I've been around, but growing up racing, I was never the fastest guy, and then even as I became a pro, Goldilocks and me used to call me a hazard and stuff, and so I think there was always like these like people that didn't believe in me, and I always felt like I had a really close knit group that believed in me, but I feel like there was a bigger group that didn't believe in me, and I don't really know how it all happened, but it felt like I just picked away at such small things and got better and better and better, and each year I made gains. But I mean, there was a lot of pushback in my brain and just my thoughts that, am I good enough? Am I really gonna be able to do this for a living? And it kind of goes back to that social norm where you're like, am I really doing the right thing with my life? And it was fearful. It kind of gave me some anxiety, and just the uncertainty of racing. You know what I mean? Like I got hurt like 3 times this year. That's a huge bummer for me. I mean, that was one of the things I took pride in my career, is I haven't gotten hurt very much in the last 5 years. Really, I've basically missed four races in the last 5-6 seasons. So I mean, I felt like that was something that I was really confident in. And then this year, I had a collarbone injury, and then another arm injury, and then now a knee injury. So I feel like when that happens, those thoughts start creeping back to you. Are you doing the right thing? And like you said, the uncertainty of like, okay, now we have a house, girlfriend, and all that stuff, and there's like a pressure to perform when you get to a certain level as well. So it's, I feel like it's just finding a balance with all that stuff. And back to the first question, where what do I do every morning? It's like, I wake up and try to accomplish those many goals, and when I do that, I feel like it really helps kind of tackle some of that anxiety and that fearfulness of not being good enough. And I mean, even the year that I won my championship in 2017, coming into it, I didn't think I was good enough, didn't think I was fast enough to beat Cole, and I feel like there's other parts of my life where it's like that too, where, I got friends from high school and stuff where, you look at them or view them through, social media and stuff, and it's like, yeah, those guys got great jobs and are living great lives, Am I better than them, or am I different than them? So I feel like there's a lot of fearfulness, but at the same time, I feel like that's what kind of keeps me going. It's just that that feeling of not being good enough, and just always trying to better myself and be better than I was before. And I feel like whenever I start comparing myself to others while racing or while in life, that's when I do my worst. And when I start focusing back on myself and the things that I can be better at in my life, then that's when I start doing better. So. Honey?
Yes?
Did you want to come say a few words?
No, but I have to cook.
Oh, you look really nice.
Yeah.
What will you cook?
And seared. 40 minutes.
Sorry about that. Oh, yes. Wow!